Hi, this is Jake Jacobs, and we're here with session 3, interim work assignment for the real-time strategic change practicum. We're going to take a look at the 6 RTSC principles from a different point of view for this interim assignment. The first task is going to be to print the attached blank copy of the Design from One principle worksheet you'll find on slide 8 of this slide deck. And then choose one principle you would like to focus on learning about in more depth. It can be any of the 6, and write that on the line above where it says principle. Then identify a situation you would like to use as the focus of this interim task. It can be any situation linked to your project, linked to work that you have coming up in the next day or the next week, and write a brief description of the situation in the line above situation. So I've chosen the real-time principle. You see I filled in there, and my situation is a leadership check-in meeting. So I'm going to be facilitating and designing a status report meeting for a leadership team. So the first step is think through the situation. Who's going to be there? What are the objectives that people have? What's the situation? What might be some underlying issues? What do you know about the team? And then brainstorm as many different thoughts and actions that come to mind when you are designing your approach to this situation with only this one of the 6 real-time strategic change principles in mind. So when I take a look at real-time and a leadership check-in, I'm looking at the polarity of planning for the future and thinking and acting as if the future were now. So under planning, I've got that microcosm design planning team. That's that cross-sectional team we talked about in session 2. Consistent reporting format from all teams and all work that they've done. I might be tracking in process progress against the plan, all part of planning for the future. Development sessions for team leaders, having a clear purpose and outcomes for our agenda, agreed charters for the team, briefing books ahead of the meeting. These are all things that I might do to get ready for my leadership check-in meeting. Then I have my other pole, thinking and acting as if the future were now, the more unique pole from an RTSC standpoint. Microcosm design planning team actually is one of these high leverage actions. It has to do with planning, but it's also living the future now in terms of who might plan this meeting, the people who are going to be represented at the meeting, and that may be a new best practice that we adopt. Rotating leadership of the meeting may be another best practice we're looking at. Listening checks during the meeting, being able to do active listening and say, did I hear you say this correctly? Broad involvement through an advisory council like the TJ Maxx group did. And accountabilities and support that are needed are something that we're talking about being really clear about going forward, and that support is as important as accountability, another one of those polarities. So this is how I filled in my sheet. When you get to slide 8 and print that out, you'll be looking at your principle and your situation. So what questions and insights does this raise for you? This is the last part of task 1 for the interim. One idea that comes to me, this can quickly become a long list focusing on only one principle. It's pretty easy to give equal attention to each pole of the principle for me as I came up with these. I got new ideas. Some of the things I came up with I hadn't thought of before. And it continues to make good sense to pay attention to ongoing themes like accountability and support. So these are the questions and insights that it raised for me. My question to you is, what does it raise for you when you take a look at your principle and your situation? Then this is slide 8. That's the one that you'll be printing out. Here's task 2. Reflect on your project, whatever the scope and scale that it may be. Could just be an individual meeting, could be a system-wide change and transformation effort. And draft a purpose statement for your work. Draft. So this is not getting out the tablets and hammering into the stone. This is just a rough cut, first cut of what your purpose statement might be. Remember, we've got criteria for a good purpose statement. It brings focus, People can get in a common direction. It is results, not activity based, related to current realities and future possibilities. So it's got to bridge that gap. It's something that all stakeholders can see themselves in. And then again, that term ennobling, that it's something that calls forth a greater sense of purpose than just showing up for a meeting. So example purpose statements. So these are ones that we went over in the session 2. To make the place better, too vague. Improve working relationships so we become a world-class organization. That's good, it's solid, it's not vague, but also limiting in terms of how many stakeholders might respond to that. Here's one that has investors or senior management interested, achieve improvements of 30 million, but where does that leave the rest of our stakeholders? Or here's an example of a purpose with meaning for everyone: to improve the performance, efficiency, quality, and satisfaction of patients and employees of our hospital. So remember, we talked about how to get to a good purpose statement is to use this 5 why process. And you can ask why or what does that get you, and then come up with what your next answer is. So for example, this culture integration team that I've told you about, these 2 organizations coming together, why do we need to kick off the culture integration team? Well, so that we can get everyone on the same page in terms of this team. Well, why is that important? I would say so that they can be an effective team. Okay, good, but why is it important to be an effective team? So that we can provide effective leadership for the culture integration itself. Now we're starting to get closer to home. And why is it that we need to provide effective leadership? This was actually the purpose for the launch meeting of the CIT, or Culture Integration Team, so that we're ready and able to provide needed leadership, guidance, and oversight in creating an integrated culture aligned with business goals and a company we are all proud to work for. You see, that last piece gets to be more ennobling. It's something that we're proud to do. So when you get to your purpose statement, I'm going to ask you to put down those 5 whys and continue to say, well, what would that get us? Just to kick off the culture integration team. Why? So people can get on the same page. We can be an effective team. We can lead this integration effort. And then we can do it with guidance and oversight in creating the integrated culture aligned with business goals and a company that we are all proud to work for. And then desired outcomes. This is the 3rd task for the interim period. And these are high-level deliverables. Clearly define what success is going to look like at the end of whatever your work is. Non-negotiable results. Need to be driven by data. So again, you go back to what's the situation that I'm dealing with in my project? What do I know about that? What might I have to make up? I'm not sure about it. I might have to do some interviews. So make up and jot down a few notes about the situation, and realistic and achievable, but also a stretch. So again, here are the example desired outcomes that we came up with to make a plan. That's a bit vague. So limiting, get clear about the activities needed to ensure the success of the culture integration effort. That starts to speak to what might be included in the plan. With only one company, it's to get clear about the activities needed to ensure the success of translating the best, either for McDermott or CB&I, these 2 organizations, the practices to the new company. So that helps one, but not both. And then what might have meaning for everyone? Clarity and agreement on the activities needed to ensure the success of the culture integration effort and the role of the CIT in relationship to each of these activities. Now we're starting to get to some outcomes that benefit everyone. So the question you have to get to good desired outcomes is, given what we now know from each of our perspectives, what needs to be different? What must we have achieved that would tell us we've been successful? And then here are the actual outcomes from that first kickoff meeting. One is understanding and commitment to the purpose of the CIT. Second, clarity and agreement on the activities needed to ensure the success of the culture integration effort and the role of the CIT in relationship to each of these activities. And then finally, they also needed to get clarity and agreement about how we'll work together, what our individual roles, our time commitments, what are the basic building blocks of an effective team that we need to achieve in this first meeting. So you can see that the purpose and the outcomes that I chose to work from were just for an individual meeting, and that's just as valid as something for the transformation effort for all of TJ Maxx, which we talked about in session 2. So there's 3 tasks for you: taking a look first at designing from one principle, second, taking a look and saying, what might our draft purpose be for your project? And third, what might draft outcomes be for your purpose? So that takes you through the session 2 and 3 interim work for the assignment in the real-time strategic change practicum.